So in Chapter 1, we studied the 10 basic principles of economic decision-making. And now, in order to study the real-world decision-making by real-world market participants and real-world markets, in Chapter 2, we will study the principles or the techniques that economists use to analyze real-world markets. We will look at two basic models of real-world economies, the circular flow diagram and the production possibilities frontier, which focuses on the main participants in the economy and the fundamental relationships that exist between these members of the economy. So in the most basic form of the circular flow diagram, we can study the relationships between households and firms. And we will realize that firms and households interact in two different ways, in two separate markets. Firms produce output goods and households consume those output goods. On the other hand, households also provide certain resources that companies will end up consuming in the production process. We can think that households provide labor, they provide investment funds, they provide other inputs that companies use in the production process. The most simple representation of the economy is through this simple circular flow diagram. We can say that there are two kinds of market participants. There are two markets in which these participants interact with each other. And because it is a circular flow diagram, it is important to realize that all of the flows from these market participants to these market participants should be followed by the same level of flows in the opposite direction. So the one fundamental property of circular flow diagrams is that all the resources flow in this market, and there is a balance of flows throughout the diagram. We could make, you may think that this is not a particularly realistic representation of real-world markets. We are ignoring the role of the government. We are not modeling imports or exports by companies. We are not modeling the financial sector that provides funding to companies or that where consumers save their money. And you may think that if we are interested in the relationships between, let's say, firms and banks, we would have to make this diagram more complicated. We could introduce more participants, more flows of resources. But if we are only interested in the interaction among households and companies, then this representation suffices. Another model, which is very useful and very useful to describing properties in the real markets, is the production possibilities frontier. This graph shows how much output of several commodities can be produced in the economy with a given amount of inputs, factors of production, and the available technology. This graph shows us that with a particular amount of inputs and with a particular technology used in production, there is a certain trade-off that the economy can make between the production of, let's say, cars and, let's say, computers. We would say that if the economy is producing a point on this production possibilities frontier, we would say that the economy is producing efficiently. It is getting the most output it can from the available inputs and technology. We would say that point such as a point C is not feasible, not available, because we cannot achieve it, we cannot produce it with the amount of available inputs and technology. On the other hand, point such as D is feasible, but it is not efficient because the economy can strictly improve its situation by producing more of either of the commodities. And I want you to think that production possibilities frontiers can be drawn for different segments of the economy. We can describe these trade-offs in production for an entire country, or we can draw a production possibilities frontier for a household, or for a company, or for one individual. Even in the production decisions of an individual person, the person can decide how much time to spend on one activity, how much time spent on another activity, and there is a limited amount of output that can be produced. Another thing to point out about production possibilities frontiers is that they don't have to have this particular shape always. This particular shape of a production possibilities frontier implies something about the particular production process taking place. This shape implies that there is a diminishing return to using inputs in one particular activity. Notice how the shape of the production possibilities frontier is concave. And if we think of moving between points on this production possibilities frontier, we would realize that the more of cars we produce, the more and more incrementally we have to give up of computers to produce each additional unit of cars. So we would say that this production possibilities frontier shows us diminishing marginal returns. In a different situation with different two goods under analysis, we might have increasing returns technology, where the more the society produces of a particular commodity, the less of the other commodity has to be given up. And we could also, of course, have constant returns technology, for which the trade-off between producing good 1, good 2 is always the same. Okay? And once we describe the production situation between two goods in the economy, we can analyze what happens if the amount of inputs in the economy changes, or if the technology used in the production process improves. We can say that as the technology in the production process improves, more of both goods may be available, and the production possibilities frontier would expand. We can also study what happens if the technology in the production of only one of these goods improves. We can say that from an existing production possibilities frontier, if the technology used in the production of cars improves, but the technology in the production of computers stays unchanged, production possibilities frontier might expand only in one direction. So when you are reading about these two models of economies, the circular flow diagram and the production possibilities frontier, I want you to think how these models would change if we introduced a new level of complexity, if we changed, if we added a new level of interaction between market participants, or if we changed something in the production process of the commodities. One important side note about production possibilities frontier is that it only depends on the amount of available inputs and technologies. It does not depend on preferences of members of the society, and it does not say anything, or it does not depend on the prices of inputs or output goods. In particular, we cannot say anything about the comparison of point A and point B. We can only say that both of these points are efficient and feasible. We would have to say something more about what consumers prefer to buy or what companies prefer to sell to decide whether point A or point B would be produced at the end. You should think that this graph shows us the production possibilities frontier, but in the market solution, what ends up being producing also depends on consumers' preferences. You may think that this graph also shows us the consumption possibilities frontier. And it's up to consumers to decide if they want to be on this part of the graph or this part of the graph. So to summarize, the production possibilities frontier shows us nicely the effects of scarcity of inputs of production. It shows us the concept of efficiency. We know which production bundles are efficient, which bundles are not efficient. It shows us the trade-offs that producers face in producing one commodity relative to another commodity. It shows us the concept of opportunity cost. What has to be given up? How many units of one commodity have to be given up to produce an additional unit of the other commodity? Depending on the shape of the production possibilities frontier, we might have diminishing returns in production with the bowed out concave shape, or we might have increasing returns in production with bowed in concave shape. And we can introduce economic growth by studying what happens if the technology used in production improves or the available inputs in the economy change. Okay. We will continue using these two models in the following chapters. In particular, in Chapter 3, we will use the production possibilities frontier to study trade between different countries or different companies. And through the production possibilities frontier, we will show the benefits of trade to all trading partners.